Welcome to OhSister, where I unpack my Mormon sister missionary journals 10 years later. All right, it's been a minute. That is for sure. Last week I said that I wanted to talk about the mission president's handbook that was leaked, and I still want to do that, but it's basically just got too many goodies. Too many really interesting things to talk about. So I had a really hard time picking just one thing, and then I remembered, so I've been reading through it, taking lots of notes, and then I remembered the section that I chose to talk about. So I'm just gonna cover one bit of this, and I hope this piques your interest, and I hope you take the time to go into the notes and pull up this document and read it, because it's not super long and it is super eye-opening. So of course this is from 2006, right? This document was leaked on Mormon WikiLeaks or whatever in 2006, so it's definitely been updated. They might not even have a physical book anymore because they've been moving things to be like on apps and stuff, but this is at least what mission presidents were trained on, and this, their manual of what they're supposed to do. This is what they were supposed to do about missionaries who were wanting to return home. So, of course, this was not a part of my mission experience per se. Like, I certainly had hard times, but it was, it was a push for me to even consider it a hard time, because I was so dedicated to having a positive experience constantly. But I did know missionaries who were struggling and ended up going home. I had friends who had to go home because of health issues, and it's also just a really big part of the culture. So I guess quick cultural background: if you are an elder, if you are a young man and you go on a mission, you are doing everything you're supposed to do, and you can go home and get married and whatever. And that's part of the requirements for being a real grown eligible partner. And if you're a woman and you go on a mission, there's not as much, people won't turn you down for marriage if you haven't gone on a mission. But it's really good brownie points if you do go on a mission. And also there's a lot of stigma and shame around if you go home early. Even if it's you break your leg and you have to go home early, people will try really hard to go back and finish their missions. But sometimes missionaries want to go home, not because of an illness or whatever, but because they're maybe they're depressed, so they are ill, but maybe they just don't want to be there, or maybe they're super anxious or whatever. Lots of reasons someone could want to go home. And it's very frowned upon, can have lifelong consequences if you are a young man especially. But let me read what the mission president is supposed to do with you if you want to go home. So this is page 25 of the mission president handbook. And it says, some missionaries suffer from homesickness or discouragement. Others suffer from a lack of confidence. Some may have difficulty leaving the cares of the world behind. Such missionaries might ask to go home. These concerns are generally most acute during the first 90 days of a missionary's service. You can identify and resolve many of these concerns during your initial interviews with missionaries. Explain that such feelings are common in the early weeks, especially on weekends or holidays, and may recur at other times. Help them understand how to combat negative feelings and make sure they know that you are always ready to give encouragement and counsel. So, pausing here to look back at what I just said, and they have a very convenient way of kind of sanitizing the reasons why young people would go home. They say they might feel homesick or discouraged, or they might suffer from a lack of confidence. They might have difficulty leaving the cares of the world behind. And I read that now as like kind of infantilizing an older teen / young adult's real preferences and real experience. Like, say someone, they're not depressed, they just like went on a mission and then they realize like, I feel like I'm wasting my time, I'm spending all this money and I'm not doing anything, and like I want to be at school or I want to go back home and like work. Like, that would be a super rational experience for an older teen or young adult to have. But they word it here as they're having a difficulty leaving the cares of the world behind. So it's really like teaching the mission president to frame whatever the missionary may tell them, that it's like, oh no, you think you're young and you have all these big feelings, but I know better, and I know that you're just struggling to like get used to missionary service, and you're just feeling discouraged when like maybe they're depressed and they're away from their family for the first time and living with someone they don't know, and it's a bad situation and they just need to go home, right? So it also has a framing of like they're already starting to put away for the mission president to carefully just extend and extend and extend the missionaries' stay, so that if the missionary stays as long as, like, if the missionary keeps staying, like, oh, this is just going to be for 90 days. Oh, this is common in the early weeks, and I'll read the rest so you can see. But the tactic here is if you could just convince them to stay for another little bit, and then, oh, we'll just try a little bit longer. Oh, and then just try a little bit longer. Soon, even if the situation has not improved, the missionary will probably feel like, well, I made it this far, or like sunk cost, like, well, now I've already made it 6 months, so like if I go home now, like the semester, like I couldn't get back into school, or like, well, I made it a year, so I'm already halfway through, so I can stay, right? Like, this seems like a very purposeful manipulation strategy for getting the missionary to stay at all cost. So I'm going to go back to reading. It says, if a missionary is determined to return home, seek counsel from the area presidency and discuss the situation with your missionary department and field services representative. To help a struggling missionary, you may invite him or her to visit the mission home, or you may arrange for a visit to the home of a priesthood leader in the area where the missionary is serving. The atmosphere there, plus a personal interview and a priesthood blessing, often can restore sagging spirits. Your wife can often have an influence in strengthening a missionary. Help the missionary understand that deciding to return home is a very serious matter, but that the final decision is his or hers. Ask the missionary to talk with his or her parents, bishop, or stake president. You should learn what they say so that you can build on it. If the home priesthood leaders know that the family wants the missionary to continue serving, make sure the missionary calls home. Even if the parents were not originally in favor of the mission, they may want their missionary to finish what he or she has started. Parents or priesthood leaders may recommend other people who can help, such as a friend, including a girlfriend, if she will be supportive, a youth leader, a seminary teacher, or a returned missionary. Some struggling missionaries respond well to a test period. You might give a missionary an assignment still suited to his or her needs. Then you could say, try it for 3 months. If you feel the same way, we'll call the area presidency or church headquarters about your request. You might also ask the missionary to stay at least until the next transfer, so that the work will not be disrupted and his or her companion will not need to be transferred. Explain that if the missionary returns home at his or her own insistence, the missionary and the family are to reimburse the church for the cost of the return trip home. If, after counseling with the area presidency, all efforts fail and a missionary insists on going home, ask your missionary department and field services representative for further instructions. You should not feel personally responsible when a missionary goes home early after you have done all you can. Wow. Okay, so I just kind of plowed through and finished it. But a lot going on here. A lot of what I already explained of the like manipulation strategy of like, well, let me see if I can get them to just stay a little bit longer. Like, ooh, let's do a test period. You try 3 months, try this next transfer and see how it goes. And then like, if you feel the same way, then we'll call someone about your request, but still not like, okay, you can go home. Also escalating with, see who you can have them either visit with in person to help them feel supported. Like, here's one place where the mission president's wife gets some credit, but it's pretty manipulative. Like, oh, you're missing your mom? Here, substitute mom for an hour, right? Or go hang out with this bishop's family, or okay, let's call their parents first and make sure their parents would encourage them to stay. Yes, okay, let's have them talk to their parents. Or let's see if their girlfriend, if they go home early, will their girlfriend not marry them? Is that the case? Yes, okay, let's have them talk to their girlfriend. And she'll say, babe, if you come home early, we can't get married in the temple and I'm not going to marry you. Right? Like that's... They instruct the mission president to find people who can help pressure the young adult to change their mind about where they want to be and what they want to do with their time. And not only like just saying where they want to be and what they want to do with their time does not put the stakes of what a mission is, right? It's like you're gone for 1.5 to 2 years. It's at a really critical point in life where a lot of people are like going to college and getting degrees and starting work, and you get back and maybe you miss like 3 or 4 years due to the schedules of when you arrive and when you get back, and suddenly all of your peers who are following a normative schedule like already have a degree and are working a job, and you get back and you haven't even started school yet. Like, not great, right? You're doing this, you're paying to be there, your family is paying if you don't have the money. It's a lot to ask of a person, and it should be, if someone has true freedom and like true consent, then they can say, hey, I want to leave. Maybe you talk with them about it and make sure they really do want to leave. But if they're like, yes, I really want to leave, then they should be able to leave. Whether or not they're a minor or technically an adult, young adult, like they should be able to leave if they want to leave. And then of course they also escalate it even further and they say, okay, well, just so you know, If you go home because you want to, then you and your family will have to pay for the trip home. And that in itself could be like something that could trap someone on their mission, because if they already don't have money to be on a mission, well, maybe they don't have the $3,000 or $4,000 that it might take to pay for their plane tickets and everything, right? So that is wild. That is very manipulative. It's of course framed as the mission president and the people writing this manual would have thought that it's okay to use such intense manipulation tactics because they believe it is one of the most important things you can do in your life. It's kind of like folklore. It's like Mormon folklore that when you lived in heaven before you came down to earth, you promised people that you were going to go on a mission and find them. And I don't know that that's necessarily doctrine, but it's kind of something that I believed, and something we like to talk about and over the campfire, kind of cool, spooky, spiritual stories, right? It's it feels like it's such a big deal that it's appropriate to ignore when someone says, "Excuse me, I don't want to be here anymore. Let me go home." They think it's all right to say, "No, you may not." So that is wild. Be sure to read this yourself. There are lots of things like this, including discussion about what is appropriate for the mission president's wife to do, what to do if they have children who go on their mission with them, as well as very interesting things about money and whether or not the mission president is paying a lot of money to be there or not. Spoiler alert, they are not paying a lot of money to be on a mission. So there's that. I've been having a great time working on this project, and it takes a lot of time every week to keep this up. If you have the desire and the means to support me financially, your donations are very helpful. Of course, I have the cheeky disclaimer that your donations will not bring eternal salvation for you or anyone else. There are links in the description where you can make a one-time donation, or you could sign up to be one of my monthly patrons to support this and my other creative work. Thank you. Let's get back to it. Monday, July 13th, 2015. Mission day 276. Woke up, called President Partridge, and drove back to Spearfish. We made it home by 8 o'clock, and then we showered and studied. Or I did, while Sister Snow started our P-Day cleaning. A couple lines in my patriarchal blessing stood out this morning. Quote, "I bless you with the health and strength to endure tests and trials to endure the tests and trials of this life, that you will be able to resist the attempts by Satan to destroy your testimony. I promise you that, if you pray diligently to be protected from the evils of the world, God will provide you with a mantle of spiritual strength through which Satan's influence cannot penetrate." Unquote. I felt that mantle yesterday. I was completely trusting in and being guided by the Spirit in strong, continuous promptings. I knew that we would be given the direction we needed. It was alarming and frightening to be so near the influence of evil, yet I knew we'd be guided and protected. And then another quote from my blessing. Quote, "I bless you that, even though you will be tried and tested in this world, you will understand that sometimes you are tested because of God's love for you, and sometimes you will be tested because of the wickedness that surrounds you in your earthly life. Unquote. And then I drew some dots to show, I guess I wrote that in the morning and then I finished later. So I'm going to just pause for a second to remind you that what just happened chronologically on Sunday was the second scary stalking incident. This time it was a little more intense because there was like a car that was following us. That just felt a lot more intimidating than the other instance. And it was also during a time where we had been kicked out of the area normally because they considered it to be too dangerous for young, naive sister missionaries, which I was kind of offended by, but turns out maybe that was partially true. So anyway, with that context, let me go back and finish the entry. While emailing President Partridge, we realized that this is going to be our last week in Spearfish before Rally. And transfers are August 1st, so we needed to start bringing our bye-bye books. It was hard to say goodbye to the Hydes. They're a powerful, unified, Christ-centered, priority-straight couple. I want to marry a man like Brother Hyde, faithful and patient with me, cheerful, diligent, and 100% focused on the Lord. He doesn't ever complain. He is always full of praise. I loved him. Sydney works all day tomorrow. She's taking it hard. Sigh. It's hard, and I cried while doing hugs, but I feel the peace of the Lord. I know it will all work out. Okay. So, talking through the day then. So first of all, we had stayed the night with our sister training leader in Rapid. So that was, we woke up, we called President Partridge, our new mission president. Hadn't even met him yet, but he was already so much more responsive to us being freaked out than President Allen had been. So that was great. Thank you, President Partridge, for taking us seriously, or at least taking our freaked out feelings seriously. So yeah, we woke up, we called our mission president to check in, and then we drove back to our area. We got home, and then it's just kind of started, doing a normal day. And obviously, the whole stalking thing was weighing on my mind. So that's what I was thinking about when I was doing my personal study, and I'm sure I've explained this, but I'm not sure that I have, so I guess I'll just explain it. The way that I interacted with theological materials, which when I was a missionary was the Standard Bible, the Book of Mormon, Pearl of Great Price, the whole... I've got here my mission scriptures. The way that I interacted with these, plus my patriarchal blessing, plus general conference talks, and the few books from the church that we were allowed to have, is I would kind of use these materials as a way to talk with God and to get God's perspective on what I was worried about or what I was trying to figure out to do. I didn't like to make decisions on my own. I liked to make decisions and get God's approval, or does God say yes? Okay, then it's the right thing. Even better if God will just tell me directly what I have to do, so I don't even have to think of an option. So if I had something, every time I read scriptures, I liked to have I have a question or something, so that when I was reading, I was divining or receiving some sort of message instead of just reading to I don't know, like the way you would read a book. So it makes sense that after that kind of scary day, when we get back home, that I would be reading my patriarchal blessing and looking for some reassurance. Some reassurance from God and some comfort, because I was very anxious. didn't know it. Didn't know that's what it was. Didn't call that, but it very was, and was certainly very scared and very worried after what had happened, and feeling the pressure of, I'm supposed to be the adult senior companion, and I need to be able to like stay calm and reassure Sister Snow that we're totally safe and this is fine, but like I need to really feel good with God before I can do that myself. So reading my patriarchal blessing, and then of course there's stuff in there about like, yes, there's going to be a way for you in your life to keep your testimony strong. And also, sometimes bad stuff happens. Sometimes it's because God loves you, and sometimes it's because there's just wickedness all around you in the world. And I could probably talk for a long time about about my beliefs now around those ideas. I think they're very unhealthy and toxic, but I will not even go there. So if you don't get it, if you don't get why that's bad, you're just gonna have to ask me about it and I'll talk to you, or maybe it will come up later. But yeah, so the rest of the day, jumping to the rest of the day, I was talking about how, like, oh, this is going to be our last week here before rally, before the, like, big festival thing happens, and we get kicked out, and we have to go to our other area, and then soon it will be time for transfers, so we need to bring around our bye-bye books, which is what we called them. I have mine, I should maybe go grab it. And so that we can have the members in our area sign them and make sure that we can keep in touch with them for the rest of our lives. So starting to say goodbye to people. And it's very sad, especially Sydney. She's like a high schooler who was hanging out with the missionaries all the time, and you know, it sucks to be a Mormon kid in South Dakota because there's just not a lot of other Mormons there. So she was always really close with the sister missionaries. So she was sad that we were leaving, of course. But the main thing I want to point out here is, once again, my main focus of everything that's going on is I'm still like, it's always the back of my mind, and it comes up so much in my journal, is how I need to get married. So like in so many interactions that I have with people, I'm like thinking about, how does this relate to my upcoming marriage to whoever? And so of course, every time there was a really sweet family or a really sweet couple that was like in the ward that we would like have dinner with a lot or whatever, it'd always be like, oh man, like I want to be like them, and I'm gonna like write down the cute things that they do so that I do that when I'm married. I want to be like a cute couple like them. And it's just like interesting to me that I specifically wrote, I want to marry a man like Brother Hyde. And what I wrote was, he's faithful, not necessarily faithful to me, but just faithful to like the church, right? Faithful to the Lord. Because then of course he would be faithful to me, obviously, but he has to be faithful to God. He will be patient with me, aka I need someone like like, my husband will have the final say about things, and stuff will be up to him. So I really want someone who's patient with me, and like, if they have to be sort of my better, at least they will be like nice about it. I want him to be cheerful and diligent and 100% focused on the Lord. Also, never complains and always full of praise. So, it's a little bit of a immature idea of what a marriage and a relationship would look like, but that's probably to be expected of someone so young. But I think the most concerning thing for me is just the fact that I am 20. I just turned 20. And this is nothing new. I have been my whole life told to think about the kind of man I'm going to marry and have all these expectations, and also the list was given to me of what I should look for in a partner and what I should be as a partner. So that's just popping up again here. Just got to point it out because that is the point of this podcast. So let's continue. Tuesday, July 14th, 2015. Mission day 277. We got to visit Ellen Hopwood while we were in Rapid. She's already off the breathing and feeding tubes, which means much less frustration since she could talk to us. Sister Snow gave her a printout of our pick from last Tuesday, which she loved. After singing I Believe in Christ, 3 verses since it's pretty long, 3 instead of all of them, I guess, we left her with a prayer. Smiley face. I hope we can see her again. I hate to be chased out of Spearfish so soon. I love this town so much. 12 week was hard for Sister Snow today. I finally understand a little more about why she likes it. The way we've been doing it, she feels like she hasn't been doing anything right. That can't be right. It must be why she doesn't like it. Well, I'll keep reading. I need to be sure to stop and compliment her skills more. She ended up taking a nap while I mostly finished packing and wrote her a note. Nora was in severe distress today. She's been under the burden of feeling solely responsible for the physical and emotional needs of her grandsons. We advised her to talk to President Stockman. I felt the Spirit pouring out strongly as I assured her that he has the priesthood authority to listen and give counsel, and that while in leadership positions, we are given an unhuman, heavenly capacity to love and understand. He will be able to help her. 12-week training meeting was interesting. Lately, I feel like the elders are playfully, yet a little seriously, poking around at however close we can get to flirting as missionaries. Imagined or not, this puts me on edge. I've been praying for help to stay focused, and it is working. Smiley face. I'm not sure how poor Sister Snow is doing. Oh yeah, she took me out to Subway for lunch, which was fun. As per our Tuesday usual, the Stockmans fed us dinner. It was bittersweet for it to be our last in a while. They invited Savannah and Darren Marriott over as well. And the adults mainly kept the conversation going. Sitting and eating and listening, I felt like I was at home again. I guess I felt like a kid. Louisa prepared a festive meal of pulled pork sandwiches, pasta salad, coleslaw, melon, chips, etc. I cried when we said goodbye, especially when shaking President Stockman's hand. He does so much for these people. I love him and his family so much. I really would love... I think I would love to live here. I would love to stay here. I really would. I need to stay in touch with their family. Oh, Sister Finlinson. Okay. Just a reminder about the Ellen Hopwood visit. Because she's not a regular person who was occurring. This was the woman, the sister we visited in the hospital while we were in Rapid due to suddenly driving away because there was a weird stalker going on, right? So she was already out of the hospital and we got to go visit her and she was doing much better. And I guess when it was P Day, Sister Snow printed out a picture from visiting her and we gave that to her and she really liked it. Anyway, it looks like overall I'm feeling a lot of I'm like reminiscing about my time in this area. I'm starting to feel nostalgic and like sad to leave. I guess I didn't know yet that I was gonna leave, but I was pretty sure that I was gonna leave. Like I'm pretty sure the sister training leader was like, yeah, you're probably leaving, you know. Also, it was very sweet reading about this dinner with the Stockmans. I'm not sure if this is the last time I saw President Stockman. But if it is, I just want to like I want a moment of acknowledgement because I probably write about it later, but it wasn't too long after my time in this area finished that President Stockman died kind of tragically, just like it was a surprise, you know? And it was, you know, tragic for not only his family, but for the community. And he was just a really cool, like, sometimes a lot of times, at least on the podcast, when I'm talking about bishops and branch presidents, I have a lot of like bitterness and resentment about the built-in power dynamics and like the problems that can come with that, even for people who mean well, let alone for people who are willing to like take advantage, right? Like I have a lot of problems with the hierarchical authority figures in the church, but that's not to say that even within this broken system that there aren't so many wonderful, beautiful people. And President Stockman and that family was, you know, they're a beautiful family. And I'm still so grateful for the chance that I had to get to know them, I guess. Just get to see these cool people they're all so interesting. Everyone is. Every time you get to know someone, it's interesting, and they're like a whole person with their own life, right? But it was very sad. Like I mourned. I had grief when he passed suddenly, and of course, times a million for his family and for his close friends, right? But I'm grateful that I got the chance to know him a little bit, to know his family. And I just want to point out, like, sometimes it's really hard to be a missionary, but then, you know, sometimes, and it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it better, it doesn't fix the problems. But there are moments like this where there's this family, they love the missionaries, they really care about us, they really believe in us, like 19, 20-year-old kids. There's these families that look up to us, they believe in us, they trust us, they have us over for dinner every week, they make us special food, they're rooting for us, they're really involved in the church, and they're like helping us with our missionary work. Like sometimes that happened, and it was so sweet and so special, and I just had to take a minute for that. Of course, I think my final thing for this day was when Nora was really upset about her grandson and the way that we dealt with that. I've talked about how when you're a woman in the church, if you're a missionary, that's like a chance for you to have the most power and authority that like you'll ever have. Even if you are like a mission president's wife or like the stake or general relief society president, you don't have the same priesthood authority in the way that you do when you're a sister missionary. So when you're a sister missionary, you get a blessing, right? You get the blessing and you get the sort of like you're called to be a missionary. And of course I didn't get like the Melchizedek priesthood, but I was set apart to have the authority to act with the priesthood. So at this point in my life, I was the most qualified to give someone spiritual advice within the Mormon framework that I ever would. But here we are with this woman who is worried about her grandson. So it's not like a church thing, it's like a personal family thing. So you would think that I would feel qualified to give like spiritual advice or whatever. But no. I wrote, we advised her to talk with President Stockman. And then I have this big spiritual experience around me testifying to her that the best way for her to get advice and to get counsel, aka to hear what God wants her to know, is for her to talk to her branch president, because he has the authority. And I wrote, I felt the Spirit pouring out strongly as I assured her that he has the priesthood authority to listen and give counsel. And I also made a promise. I said, what I have been taught and what I promise you is, while we're in leadership positions, we are given an unhuman, heavenly capacity to love and understand. So I was not making this up. This was what we were taught. This was what I was taught my whole life. It was emphasized, especially as a missionary. But basically, who the Lord calls, he qualifies. So if you're asked to do something and you don't know how to do it, but it's for church, then God will give you the capacity. And I just have to point out that, one, how strange of me, having 7 months earlier been worried about the church not being very feminist, to now being like, I'm gonna promise you wholeheartedly that what you need is for this man to give you counsel. And that felt so in line, that felt so right. Like, I felt the Spirit, aka it felt congruent with my values. This felt feminist to me. Like, I don't think I saw myself shifting in my views on gender and hierarchy and all that, but like I wouldn't have considered myself to be experiencing a shift in values. I would have still considered myself to be pretty feminist, but this kind of shows that I am more deeply like more deeply and fervidly internalizing the church's gender hierarchy and not really maybe sort of questioning it the way that it seems like I kind of was before. The other point I wanted to point out here is the danger of the message that someone in a leadership position has an unhuman heavenly capacity to fill that position well. Particularly because we are also taught that, like, God can speak through the person in the church leadership position to you. Like, they are not like literally God is speaking through them, but like God is inspiring them to say, right? They're not like possessed by God, but they are filled with the Holy Spirit, and then they speak, and they have the burning of the bosom, and they use their words to display to convey the message that they are feeling or thinking. Like, that's how it's supposed to work. This is very dangerous. And I know I've said that a lot, but I have to say it again because this is something I'm really caring about right now. The idea that simply having a church calling gives you a divine capacity to love and understand people and to know the best way to serve them. It means that things in the church regularly happen, such as there is somebody who is, for example, being abused by a family member, a parent. They tell their church leader. The church leader responds in the way that they've been taught, which is to not get authorities involved and probably to try to keep things in the church system. So it's up to the church leader to discern whether or not the person who's the victim whether or not the victim needs to repent or not. And often they are told they need to repent when in fact they are speaking up about being a victim of abuse, but they're told that they need to repent and they've done something wrong. And the victim will believe whatever their church leader tells them. And they believe if nothing is done to prevent the abuse from continuing, then that means God wants them to stay in the situation, and they should not ask for help outside of this church channel of help because, well, they went literally right to God, and God said, you just need to wait it out, or okay, I'm gonna talk to them as their bishop or stake president or branch president. I'm gonna hear them out. I'm gonna tell them what they need to do to repent, and I'll take care of it. So however it's worked out with someone who is perpetrating abuse, then the victims know that God is taking care of the person who is doing the harm, so they know they shouldn't, it's discouraging a victim of abuse to go out to another circle of, civil authorities or, even just telling other people, because they literally already went to someone who has a specific divine connection to God. They have a inhuman, divine, heavenly capacity to know what's going on. Right? Dangerous. And this happens way too often in situations where everyone has the best intentions. because it's just the way that sort of all of the doctrine and all of the practices have sort of fallen, whether intentionally or not. It's just the way that it continues to happen. And of course, there are instances where people have bad intentions, and it can be even worse. And of course, this applies even outside of situations of like someone sharing to their leader that they're a victim of abuse. Like maybe, I won't say who it is, but I know, like, honestly, so many people, but this is a specific instance. I know a person who was given a church calling. They were a woman, and they were called as the Relief Society president, which is one of the most time-consuming callings that you can be given as a woman, and it's usually given to someone who has kids and is probably pretty busy with life, then they're asked to be the Relief Society president in general. And this person reached a point in her life where she was like doing really, really bad, like really bad. And she realized she could not keep doing this, or bad things would happen to her mental health, right? And she talked to the bishop about it, and the bishop told her, look, I know you're not feeling like, I hear what you're saying, but you can do this, and I'm not gonna release you from your calling. You need to keep doing this. And she listened to, she felt really bad. She felt really uncomfortable. She felt really guilty. And she listened to him, even though he was completely gaslighting her and discrediting her own ability to know what's best for her. Because we're taught that the one who knows best for you is the person with the calling. So eventually, she was able to have her spouse, who was a man, talk to the bishop and tell him to let her be released. But this sort of one person being given divine capacity and authority over another person is really bad, and it comes up in a lot of ways, and it hurts a lot of people. So I have to talk about it every time it comes up. Alrighty, let's keep going. Let's go to Wednesday. Wednesday, July 15th, 2015, mission day 278. We said goodbye to the food pantry folks today. Did receipts, then left them with Savior, Redeemer of my soul, this hymn. We'll have to make sure that whichever missionaries are sent in after the festival go back out there. They really like having us come and bring the spirit every week. Sydney came with us to the Clements for lunch. While driving up, I accidentally took the interstate, so it took us a little longer to get to Hot Springs, but we took like a million pictures of how pretty the road was going the back way, so it worked out well. Brother Clement got pretty distracted by past experiences when we told the hummingbird story. Grandma Huntington offered to sign us up for pedicures on our P-Day coming up. That will be nice, smiley face. It was our last lesson with Marvin, not just on the phone. He still really wants to be baptized, but is not confident in his ability to quit smoking. We read out of D&C 89, which he seems to really like to just read for himself. He knows all the blessings, he's just got to do it. While we were visiting, I received an unmistakable prompting that we aren't going to see Marvin be baptized in this life. He is too tired, overcoming the natural man is too big a task, but we still need to help him as much as we can. We committed him to move his smoking things to a kitchen cupboard to make them more out of reach. I put it this way. If you were addicted to chocolate, would you be more likely to give in at a bakery or in the park? We dropped off Sydney, and I was a sad cookie. I didn't tell them about Marvin. Then we finished packing our car and left Spearfish forever. Sister Hauser fed us dinner, which was delicious. She went all out with grilled barbecue chicken, orzo pasta salad, pork and beans, and homemade lemonade. But the conversation. She told us about a freaky out-of-body experience she had that night. Oh, no. She had that taught her to never mess with that stuff again. And we told her about our car incident, and she pointed out that creeper wasn't done. It was a person with an agenda, and we needed to report to the police so they could get any information possible. I started to freak out when she talked about that. We really needed to call them. As soon as we left, I called the police and let them know. Goodness, my second police report on my mission, this time for Spearfish. I'm annoyed at myself for not calling the police while it was happening. When we pulled into our apartment in Custer, guess what? A creepy man was just chilling in the parking lot with his dog. Totally not what I needed. We first just ran inside with all our stuff still in the car, and I wanted to call the cops. We prayed about it and kept looking out the windows until we finally just ran everything. My 3 suitcases, her own, our food, and all the other stuff back inside. I just need to go to bed. Oh boy. All right. I won't talk about everything here. I guess I'll kind of go to the beginning and go to the end again. I'll talk about our lesson with Marvin. So Marvin, if you remember, he is the elderly, partially disabled veteran that we were working with. He had been meeting with the missionaries for a long time. And he was pretty sick, like kind of in and out of a veteran hospital, or I think there was a veterans hospital, some sort of like veterans housing health place. Anyway, that's who this is. So we read D&C 89. Just so you know, that's the Doctrine and Covenants section that has the word of wisdom. And it tells like the blessings of the word of wisdom. And so we would have read that to him. And I guess the main thing about that was, while we were talking, I wrote about it, that I received an unmistakable prompting that we aren't going to see him be baptized in this life, which means he'll get baptized, but it'll be when he's dead. Like, it'll be temple work baptism, right? And I think that what was really going on was I was just, like, I couldn't ignore anymore the realities of the situation. It's like, yes, he did not have the physical capacity to endure, like, the withdrawals and the big changes of quitting smoking. Like, he just needed to be able to, like, live out the rest of his life the best he could, right? And I think it would have been more humane and loving, I think, for the missionaries to stop bothering him and telling him he's not good enough and he needs to change these, like, deeply personal, fundamental parts of his experience in order for him to be, like, worthy of God's love, right? Like, maybe the missionaries could still visit him just to, like, talk to him about God or something, if he liked that. But I wish the takeaway had been, all right, it's not happening for him in this life, but we're gonna stop pushing him for what we think he needs to do, or what we know is what I would have thought, and we're just gonna do our best to support him in his, like, relationship with God, or, like, spirituality, right? But that's not, of course, I was like, we still need to do as much as we can. So, like the instructions for the mission president that I read earlier today, it's like, don't feel guilty if the missionary leaves home as long as you've done everything that you can. And I've internalized the same way of thinking, even though I hadn't read that manual, but it's just a part of being in the church is like, all right, if you're in charge of someone, aka you have the gospel and they don't, especially if you're a missionary, but honestly, just anyone, if you know better than someone else, it is ultimately their decision what they're going to do, but you should do as much as you can to push them in the right direction. And now I'm like, oh, that's pretty coercive, that's pretty controlling. That does not create healthy, fulfilling relationships, bare minimum. Like, it's just kind of toxic and uncool. So that's unfortunate. Also, I'm doing a lot of internal face palms, reading back about the way I was talking to him about his, like, trying to get him to quit smoking. The story I came up with was, if you were addicted to chocolate, would you be more likely to give in at a bakery or in the park? And now I can see how insensitive that is to, like, compare chocolate to a nicotine addiction, because they're just very different, right? I think we all know that that's pretty different. But there is another aspect, actually, to that comparison. I remember a story I had heard in a Relief Society lesson before my mission. I've tried to look it up, but I can't find it, but somebody read or maybe told from their own personal experience. There was a story about, there was this woman who had an addiction or a compulsion to eat this chocolate cake that she was supposed to give to a friend. And the story was just about her sitting at home with that chocolate cake, and it was just like the devil was like making her have thoughts over and over about the cake, and she wanted to eat it so bad, until eventually she had to get the cake that she was supposed to give to someone, take it out of the fridge and throw it away in the trash can so that she could not eat it because she was feeling so compulsive about eating it. And then the takeaway of the story was like, the takeaway from that story was like, haha, how funny, how silly, how relatable. But like, yeah, if the Satan is tempting you to do something that you know is bad, aka eat unhealthy, fattening food, it's the undercurrent, then you just gotta make it impossible to make that mistake. And the stuff with obsessive neuroticism about eating healthy food and being really scared of gaining weight shows that in some ways, I was really starting to feel a strong neuroticism and a strong compulsion of like being afraid of like eating chocolate or eating like desserts, eating sugar. So that shows just a little bit of the psychology of being a missionary at this point in time, of how much messaging we were getting, not only about being obedient, but about food. So there's just a little moment there. Jumping forward. Yes, so we met with Sister Hauser. She made us a nice dinner. She talked about trying to like, I can't remember what it's called. Like trying to like float in your body or something while you're dreaming. I don't know. But it was like she tried it and it was really scary, and we were all convinced that there had been like something demonic about it, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do that again because I don't want to invite demons into my body and into my house." And we were like, "Yeah, that's bad." It's very exciting but scary. It's wild when ghost stories are like real. Like it was like we were like, yeah, that's real. Like you shouldn't mess with that stuff because it's real. Now I don't even have to get into that because yeah. But she pointed out that not only for our own sake should we report to the police that scary thing with the stalker, but also because if there is some random person who's trying to abduct young ladies, which is the only thing we can assume that was happening, if, you know, like, if they weren't just trying to spook us, like, if they were actually, like, sinister motives, right? She had a good point. They probably were just gonna keep trying. And I felt so guilty. And I wrote, I'm annoyed at myself for not calling the police while it was happening. And we did call them. And I remember being like, dang it, like, I don't remember, like, if I had called when this was happening, like, we could have looked and said, here's the license plate, or at least, like, here's, like, we knew it was a black sedan that had, like, a luggage rack on top, but I don't think we knew, like, what model or make or whatever. Like, we could have gotten that information, and they could have, like, found this person and found out, like, maybe, you know, but, and I blamed myself for not calling the police, but now I'm like, oh, Sister Finlayson, it's not your fault, because I was not told that I should call the police if something happened. I was told that I should call my mission leaders, and that's what I did. I did the right thing according to the missionary rules. And it was only later, after it had happened twice, that I was like, oh my gosh, not only for my own sake, but for the sake of public well-being, if something bad happens, I should report it. So this is unfortunate. But that's what happened. Okay. And then, of course, we get back to our other apartment in our other area that we're going to be staying in for the rest of the transfer. And what do we see? We see another scary man. And now I can see how we were so scared and we were so, like, feeling helpless, and the stuff that was going on wasn't being dealt with, and we, like, honestly probably should have had a chance to, like, take a break and, like, talk to a therapist and, like, chill out. But that's not what happened. So I was just so primed to now see everyone as a dangerous person who was out to get me because they were, like, being sent by the devil to, like, stop God's work and, like, get the sister missionaries. So I'm pretty sure that when we got to our apartment, there was just someone else who lived in the apartment complex, and they were just out walking their dog, right? Just taking their dog out to let their dog pee. Because that is the most reasonable explanation for why someone would be out in a parking lot or apartment building with their dog. But of course, we were so scared of what had been happening that we thought it was something sinister. And I guess I'm just angry for the needless terror and fear and suffering that Sister Snow and I went through, because our situation wasn't dealt with appropriately, you know. Even though President Partridge, like, at least acknowledge that it was like, oh yeah, better safe than sorry. You should go stay with your sister training leaders in another city and like lose like the person who's tailing you. We still felt scared. Like we hadn't called the police. We didn't know if they knew, like if they had followed us around town a little bit, like maybe they knew where we lived. It probably wouldn't be that hard to find, like it wouldn't be that hard to find where we lived in this other town, you know. So we just were, or at least I, and I think Sister Snow too, I was very on edge. I was very scared. And I was trying to just like push it away and just be like, I feel nervous, but don't feel nervous. God's got our back. And just like push it away. Just go to sleep, sleep it off, just ignore it. And I don't think that worked because I was just repressing all this like fear and worry about the world. And so instead of addressing it and like doing anything to resolve our fears of being followed, or even just talking about it, it just all stayed squished down. So then it was just always at the back of my mind, and I was pretending like it wasn't bothering me, but now everywhere we go, I think everyone's out to get me. That's how that works. Very unfortunate. Okay. Moving on. Thursday, July 16th, 2015. Mission day 279. Tomorrow is the mission tour, and I am so excited. Weekly planning today, but before we started, we had a fun visit with Rebecca Davis. We did an object lesson with a candle in a dark room. Sister Snow was way excited about the candle bit. I felt a little bit creepy at first, but it turned out cool. One candle does make a big difference in a room that's otherwise empty. I also worked on unpacking my spearfish stuff to make Custer the permanent residence, except I let myself be distracted by playing with hydrogen peroxide on everything, which is uncool. We went to the Ikedas without a plan at all, and they noticed pretty quick and pointed it out. We nodded in embarrassment, but our merciful Heavenly Father gave Pearl a cool scripture to talk about. A close shave. All right, I won't talk a ton about this day. Rebecca Davis was the oldest kid of the bishop in Custer. This was the family who we went to their house when there was a tornado situation, and, you know, we felt pretty safe with them and we liked them. Anyway, their daughter Rebecca was thinking about going on a mission, and they really liked having the sister missionaries come and like teach her lessons, and she like would go out with us sometimes. So we I don't remember why, but I do actually remember the point of this lesson. I don't know whose idea it was, but the idea was we were talking about how hard it can be to be an example in an area where you're like the only Mormon kid, which was like her situation. But how just having one person with the gospel like changes everything. And so we were in their basement, or in a dark, maybe not the basement, we were in a dark room. And then we had one candle, and we were talking about like, oh yeah, you're in this area and it's hard, and there's like not a lot of other Mormon kids, like you're maybe the only one at school or something. It could be hard to be like weird and hard to stand out, hard to have different rules than other kids. But you know, and then, you know, we show like, okay, if you blow out the candle, oh my gosh, it's so dark in here, like that's scary. And then if we relight the candle, all of a sudden, like, oh, we can see again. And like, yeah, we can't see everything, but, you know, then the message being like, Rebecca, you are this candle. Like, there are people who have been in the darkness their whole lives, and it's just been scary, and they just, like, they haven't been able to see anything. And then they meet you, and you are that light in their life. and we probably would have cried and had goosebumps, and she would have felt very validated in, like, probably her mom was there too, maybe like, I don't know, very validated in the sort of like martyr complex that at least I had when I was Mormon. It's like hard to feel so different than other people sometimes, but also can kind of feel special. So that's what we were playing on there. And then also, for some reason, I was cleaning with hydrogen peroxide and I got distracted. Very normal, especially with ADHD, which I didn't know I had, and I got mad at myself a lot for how distracted I would get. So yeah, okay. I'm gonna just jump to the conference because I wrote a lot in there. So I actually did all of my notes in my journal this time. So I wrote, mini zone conference, July 17th, 2015, Rapid City, South Dakota, President and Sister Partridge, mission tour. So, I guess we got a new mission president, and since our mission covered kind of a wide area, we couldn't all get together for one big meeting to meet the new mission president and his wife. So we just had different gatherings of missionaries in different areas, and then they went on a tour all around the mission to meet all the missionaries. So that's what this is. And I guess I decided to just take notes directly into this journal instead of my study journal like I had done before, because it would take me so long to then transcribe and rewrite the talks into my like my regular journal. But the con of that now is it's just like in weird bullets, and it's like harder for me to read through it. So I am, for the first time, I'm just gonna kind of skim through what I wrote instead of reading everything. So yeah. I guess it started with, I'll just give sort of an outline and we'll go from there. It started with them giving like a pre-study of like questions to focus on, what they wanted us to think about. They really wanted us to think about how baptism is important with our eternal progression. And then we sang a hymn, High on the Mountaintop. President and Sister Partridge talked a little bit about what their life was like before their mission. They talked about their expectations, and then we got a training from our zone leadership. So Sister Harris was the sister training leader, and then Elder Walden and Elder Witt were the zone leaders. So they talked to us about the fire of the covenant. They talked to us about how unseen angels are ministering to us. They wanted us to write down what are the trials of the last 6 months and what are the blessings of the last 6 months. And, I wrote down a few trials, including stalker men, but way more blessings. One of them was getting the leadership binder, which is like one of the best blessings I could think of was getting the binder that President Allen would give missionaries full of talks. And I was very excited about it. That was one of the big blessings. And then they asked us a question. I wrote it down. Have I thanked Heavenly Father as sincerely and as often for these blessings as I have prayed for strength in our trials? And then here's the quote that I will read. When we choose not to focus on what is missing from our lives, but are grateful for the abundance that is present, love, health, family, friends, work, the joys of nature, and personal pursuits that bring us happiness, the wasteland of illusion falls away and we experience heaven on earth. Okay, so, and that was a quote from President Thomas S. Monson, the then prophet of the church, that they quoted and then I wrote down. Okay, so the training, basically from our zone, training people was, you all are complaining too much and you're focusing on the hard things, and you should focus on the blessings, because if you do, the wasteland of illusion falls away and we experience heaven on earth. Basically, it's your fault you're not happy and not having success. And it's especially poignant to me now, this quote, because it tells us to be grateful for the abundance that we have. But many of these things are not actually things that missionaries have. So the list they gave was love, maybe missionaries have that. Health, maybe missionaries have that, but many don't because it's so taxing. Family, we technically had them, but we were forced to be away from them. So that was actually a source of homesickness and sadness for many missionaries. Friends, same. Work, I mean, we had missionary work, but we didn't have like regular fulfilling work. The joys of nature. Yeah, we could technically go outside and we had P-days once a week, but we didn't have like the freedom to just go like on a walk whenever we wanted or like go on some cool outing somewhere. We have very restricted movement, very restricted allowance of where we were allowed to go. Couldn't leave our area. And finally, personal pursuits that bring us happiness. The whole thing about being a missionary is that you don't get to do your own personal pursuits for 2 years. You just do God's pursuits. So why the heck did they pick that quote to shame us, to guilt us about being ungrateful missionaries? Because we couldn't even do any of that, but just is very, very typical for a missionary training. I drew a cat. I'm not sure why. I wrote down names of people I wanted to get baptized. I guess setting specific goals. Then we talked about when are good times to invite someone to be baptized. And we were reminded to do it, as soon as we could. We should do it. And they specifically trained us that in our initial lesson where we set expectations, how to begin teaching, if you remember that little nugget from Preach My Gospel, we are supposed to use that first initial meeting to explain that what we were going to do is to prepare them to be baptized. And we were going to invite them to be baptized. And there's later on a few years later, the church was like, it's silly if we're missionaries to be inviting people in the first lesson to be baptized. And that kind of rubs people the wrong way, and it can be awkward for members who are inviting their friends to talk to missionaries when the missionaries come off really intense. So they should stop doing that. We don't know why they do it. Literally, they taught missionaries for decades to do that. So that's totally gaslighting. And anyway, continuing on, they told us, they reminded us that this is a mission of love. So if we love people, we should invite them to be baptized, and we should invite them to change. They talked about how we can resolve people's concerns, aka how to trick them into doing things that they don't want to do. We learned about using simple, short, powerful lessons. An outline they gave was, here, use one of the really powerful, emotionally capturing videos that are available. Then relate that to something about what this person has going on in their life. Then say, will you do this? I don't know, whatever it is we're trying to get you to do. I promise that if you do, you will receive the help that you need in this specific thing in your life. And ideally, they're full of emotion. They're feeling really vulnerable and feeling connected and seen, and like, oh, this person, they know what's going on, and they're promising me that if I do this thing, it will help me this way. We are taught that. More of the same. Then we got to hear from the mission president's wife, Sister Partridge. So she shared some of her goals with us. And she told us that she got to talk with an apostle, or hear from an apostle. And she told us the insider scoop about Elder Elton Perry. And she told us what he told her, what he told people in a small, intimate setting about missionaries. She said, he and the apostles, they're not concerned about numbers. What matters to them is that you fulfill the mission with your full purpose of heart, and that you will be an active member, and they don't want to lose any more missionaries. And that would have been so exciting, and like, oh my gosh, you talked to an apostle? What? Like, I didn't know new mission presidents got to talk to apostles, and like, also they got to talk to the prophet. Whoa, crazy. And, you know, very like, oh yeah, yes, it is important to like save as many people as we can, baptize as many people as we can, because that's literally the point of being alive. But really, they care about us. They care about you, young missionaries. They care about you having a beautiful mission and being fully involved with full purpose of heart, and you being converted and being an active member. And this is a little bit letting something slip. They don't want to lose any more missionaries. And I'll just take a small moment to reflect on this, because when I was a missionary, I at least considered myself to be the least likely person to ever leave the church, as far as like comparing them with other missionaries, because I just felt so psychologically unsafe without the church's framework. And I would have thought I remember thinking how crazy it was that people could go on a mission and then leave and then like not be in the church, because I was like, that seems so crazy, because like every day I'm on my mission and I have miracle after miracle. And how could someone be so hard-hearted or so forgetful that they could have these experiences that we all have on our mission and then go home and set it aside and just stop believing? Like, that's crazy. But I was also really scared of that happening, so I was like very determined to be like super committed to still doing everything that I needed to do to keep my faith strong and to keep myself converted. Of course, we all know where that went, but it is telling. It's telling that when the new mission president is meeting with the highest levels of church leadership, the church leaders are saying, our priority is we got to keep the members that we already have from leaving the church. Like, yes, we want to have more people join, but they know the numbers. New people who join in are much less likely to be as actively involved and committed to the church than people who are born and raised in. So if they have people who are born and raised in going on missions and then leaving after their mission, like, the priority is not converting new people as much as they need to do that. The priority is we got to figure out how to keep the people we already have. And this is just a number that I've heard, so probably look this up if you want to know exactly the number. But I hear that the current level of people who leave the church within like a year of their mission is like 50%. It's like half of the missionaries who return home, by the time it's been a year after their mission, they're like leaving the church. So big deal, right? Okay. Then she finished her lesson here with this quote, or what she said, and then I quoted it because I loved it. She said, "Let's find joy in the journey and let's find the positive in this mission." So she is very determined to be happy and positive, which is not always bad, but if you are not allowed to not be happy at any point or not find the positive, and also if you are under coercive control, it starts to get a little more murky here. Okay. She also promised us that if you're reading the Book of Mormon every day, you will find joy, you will be strong, and you will be active members of the church. And it turns out that that was false, because when I was having my big period of dissonance, of doubt, and sort of realizing the church wasn't all that I thought it was, every time that I read the Book of Mormon, it hurt my faith. So like reading the Book of Mormon, I would read things that made me feel discomfort and sadness and worry, and it made me less active. So I was actually, near the end there, I was trying to keep my faith by keeping a distance to the Book of Mormon and other church materials. I was like, if I just don't interact with it as much, I can just kind of cherry pick what I believe in and what I'm exposed to, and then I can just keep the good, and the stuff that makes me uncomfortable, I can just ignore it. So, joke's on you. Then we get a big message from President Partridge. He talks about, like, he doesn't want to change the mission. He just doesn't want to lose any ground. So he's like, the culture that this mission already has is he's giving us his take of what he's seen. So he said, I could tell that this is already a mission where you're really obedient and you're really loving. He said, I think that you think obedience is fun. And we would have all laughed, ha 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 ha, yeah, we love being obedient. And then he would have said, and also this is a mission of love. Like, you all love each other, you love the people, and we'd all be like, oh yes. So yeah, he's like, yeah, let's keep doing this, and let's be full purpose missionaries. So we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, and we're going to also work on getting people to the temple. So if we can not only get people baptized, but get them to stay involved, and even, like finding people who are already in the church, but they haven't done their temple work yet, like getting members to get more active and get them to get their temple work. Like, let's focus on that. That's what we want. So he gave some little anecdotes. He read some scriptures. I will skip that. A takeaway from that I have to read is, I won't read you the scriptures, so you're just going to have to be confused as what this point comes from. But the takeaway was, you should climb the ladder of joy and commandments by choosing obedience. It's like almost word salad. Like, what does that even mean? And then he said, happiness isn't an emotion, it's an eternal principle. Which now I'm like, I think that's gaslighting. I say gaslighting a lot today, but I'm seeing a lot of it. Like, if you can tell somebody that the feeling of happiness is irrelevant because happiness isn't an emotion, it's an eternal principle, and you will have happiness as like a state of being in your soul if you're like obedient, and like maybe not now, but like when you're dead in eternity, you'll be happy if you're obedient and you climb the ladder of joy and commandments. Like, basically, this is the formula to lose all of your own self-determination and to just live your life on autopilot. And no matter how unhappy you are or dissatisfied, it doesn't matter because your feelings on the matter aren't relevant. The only thing that's relevant is the eternal principle of happiness, right? I hope that makes sense. I hope that you understand how brainwashy this is. Oh yeah, and then just the last thing I wrote in my final takeaway thought from that was, I wrote to teach my family how to be consecrated and to love others through missionary work. So I was all excited to not only do all this myself, but to send my family emails and letters to guilt them and push them into doing missionary work, aka try to control and convince other people to be Mormon and more Mormon. So I'm sure that was a wonderful time to be in my family. Okay, so moving on. Friday, July 17th, 2015, Mission Day 280. Well, as you can see, we had our mission tour / zone conference / mini zone training meeting. I tried out just doing my notes straight into journal pages, and I really liked it. We drove up at 8 a.m. after making sure we looked our best in order to practice our combined musical number early. Elder Kimball is in this zone now, as is Sister Johnson. Woohoo! My second trainer. She goes home in 3 weeks. So he played piano and her companion joined us, as well as Elder Dublin, Elder Whit, and Elder Walden popped in for the performance. We did Have I Done Any Good? The one for my farewell that our Scranton district did. So I just love President and Sister Partridge. With getting a new presidency, we were all a little on edge about a wrecking ball coming through, but their attitude is everything I admire and aspire to be. Be happy, be diligent, be obedient, and love. They're here to build on the great mission that already exists, and they're here specifically for us. They showed how amazingly confident, trusting, and thoughtful they are by bringing a binder with pop-out pages like this one for us to write individual letters to President and Sister Allen. Smiley face. That made me super happy. Since Sister Johnson was there, I was able to get an update on addresses and on all the folks in Scranton. As to Lynn Belmont, she did get baptized, but right after that, she found out some devastating personal news. Sister Johnson said that Lynn has been counseling with Bishop Crary, etc. I really need to write her a letter now that I have her address. Okay. I won't say a ton about this. I will say it sounds like, so I did a shared musical number with some other missionaries, which was some pretty, I don't know if that was just lucky or if there was some careful maneuvering for that to happen, but that was a really good move for me because I was wanting to, it was a good chance to sort of stand out from the other missionaries and to make an impression on the new mission president and on Sister Partridge so that they would know who I was and hopefully give me leadership responsibility. I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but also literally that's how I would have seen it, right? Like, yes, I got a chance for them to get to know me, and I don't want to just be a number, an unknown missionary. Like, I want to be involved in like the higher up stuff. So that was exciting. Just insight into my psychology. Be happy, be diligent, be obedient, love. That's what my existence was supposed to be. Enough said. And then, of course, just a little moment about Lynn Belmont, in case you don't remember who that is. She was the member who had been, like, excommunicated in my first area for, like, some fake dumb reason. And we had ran into each other, and we ran into her somehow, and she like kind of was able to get back in with the church because of like us or whatever, because she liked us. I don't know. It was like, oh, that's the reason I went to that area, is because we were like the special missionaries for her, and she would call us her girls. And anyway, found out something bad happened in her life, and I felt bad, and I was like, I need to write her a letter. And of course, the way that she was getting help was she was talking to the bishop, because since he was called as a bishop, he clearly had just as much insight as like a therapist or licensed social worker would have, right? Which is not true. She actually should have gone to like a licensed social worker, therapist, counselor kind of person. But that's, hopefully she also did that. But it's totally normal in the Mormon zeitgeist to, if you are having issues of any kind, in any way, talk to your bishop for comfort and help. And your bishop is probably a dentist and doesn't actually know how to help. And they might give you really bad advice. So that's unfortunate. Okay, Saturday, July 18th, 2015, Mission Day 281. After having started a fast, Sister Snow, to be able to perform well at the baptism and to teach our lessons successfully today, me to help her feel good, we went for a run this morning. We haven't been since the Sunday scares, so I was really enjoying getting to use my new Asics tennis shoes. I must admit, I did bring my nice pepper spray with. However, we were just fine. We did a short personal study, then had companionship study for an hour before going to Trayden Styler's baptism. I've noticed that I've been putting down Sister Snow's ideas, and so I brought it up and opened a nice can of rotting worms. She has been, as I once was with Sister Elliot, feeling frustrated and useless as this has continued. And I kept trying to immediately fix it by working together on Krista's lesson, but she was just getting more upset, so I put it aside and we proceeded to have a much more unified lesson prep session. Smiley face. As usual, she apologized afterwards, and I apologize for acting this way. We'll get it better now that we've communicated. The baptism was great. Byron and Krista came, and I did the piano, except for when we did a musical number of I Know That My Redeemer Lives, for which I sang verses 1, 2, 4, and Sister Snow played the top notes with an introduction. She was so nervous, but she did so well, even getting back in when she got lost, and I kept going. She's really learning to adapt well. Smiley face. Afterwards, we had a good, if not long and draining, lesson with Krista and the Rosenbergs. We went through all the baptismal interview questions. This was, remember, only our second official lesson with her. But she did so much on her own, and the Rosenbergs helped her out so much, that all she didn't know was who Thomas S. Monson is. Apparently, she hasn't even touched coffee since we met with her last, and we didn't even explain the word of wisdom at all. She just started to do it. The Rosenbergs tried to take over a few times, but we were patient, and they were patient, and it worked out pretty good. Sister Snow and I were dead tired after that morning, so we broke our fast with a plate of baptism refreshments and hit the hay for a nap. Sydney came up to come teach Byron at 2 o'clock. However, he canceled, so we went to the church to just preach my gospel. We were in the middle of showing Sydney our nice musical number when Julia, our referral from Brent, called us back. She said she was ready for us to come visit with her at the park in Pine Ridge. So, Sister Snow hurried and finished the song, and then we all drove up together. Another car trip with Sydney. So much fun. Smiley face. We didn't know it till we got there, but there was an art fair happening at Pine Ridge Park, and Julia was there with her family. We'd never met Julia before, so we wandered around for a minute until I saw a gal with short brown hair, jean shorts, and a purple t-shirt looking all around. She saw us and walked over, and sure enough, she was Julia. Smiley face. I will pause here for an explanation so that the next part makes sense. So Julia was a woman with some sort of mental disability, and I don't know exactly. I don't remember what was going on, but she was in a situation where, you know, she was an adult, but she was living with her family, and she had semi-independence, but still was reliant on her family for a bit of, you know, for support and especially, I think, protection from predatory people. But, you know, still like a lovely person, right? So let's back to the journal. We taught her the restoration after inviting her to be baptized September 5th. See, applied our training from Zone Conference. And she accepted. She actually was just engaged to Brent on Wednesday, and so we're going to help her get married in the temple. She just smiled so much and giggled. She's such a special spirit. We walked all around the fair practicing talking to people, and we walked by and couldn't walk past a booth full of tiny hand-engraved metal statuettes. They were so cute, I bought 4 and could have definitely bought them all. When we dropped Sydney back off in the Custer Church, where her car was, we did hug pictures again, and she gave both of us letters for going away. I need to write her a letter too. Today I started to get the transfer feeling. I'm sad to leave. I love working here with Sister Snow. We also had a sweet lesson with the Ikedas. We went right in and role-played passing out books of Mormon. Only they were practicing. And then we read Elder Birch. I was the uninterested friend, and Sister Snow read for Elder Birch. So fun! They loved it. And then they accepted the commitment to both share a copy of the Book of Mormon with someone before next Thursday. We'll see how it goes. Smiley face. Okay. That was a lot. Okay. I'll just point out a few things. So Krista, I want to talk about Krista. So she was someone we were newly teaching, and she had been found by the Rosenbergs, and she was their friend They were a couple in like probably their late 30s, and she was more like mine and Sister Snow's age, but they like worked together or something, you know? So anyway, she was kind of at a vulnerable transitory stage of life and had stuff going on with her family. And anyway, she was just eating up the church stuff, and she was considered a golden investigator. She was ready for the gospel, as we would have said. She wanted to do what we were saying, and everything we were teaching her, she was like, yes, that makes sense. Yes, I want to do that. And so by only the second lesson, we were, we had barely taught her anything, but she was so self-driven. And also the Rosenbergs were like talking with her about the church stuff so much because they were so excited about it, that we were already able to talk to her all the questions that you have to answer to be baptized. And the only thing that she didn't really know about yet was like having a testimony in other words, having faith in the current prophet, President Thomas S. Monson. And the baptismal interview covers a lot of stuff, so that's pretty wild. Also, I have to point out the weird relationship thing with Sister Snow, just the way that it was dealt with. So basically what happened was I realized, I was like, oh no, Sister Snow, I'm so sorry. I recognize that like when you bring up ideas, I'm like shooting them down, and I'm sorry. And then like bringing it out, all of a sudden, we were both having lots of feelings, and so we were trying to deal with it. So I was like trying to talk about it, but it wasn't working. So eventually we just like had to stop talking about it and just work on lesson stuff. And I don't know, I don't remember talking about it. I don't remember what she was saying, what I was saying, but from what I know about myself, it was probably not, I was trying to be helpful. I was trying to be loving and supportive, but I didn't, I wasn't very skilled at like taking responsibility for like doing mean things. And yeah. So I can imagine why that would have just been a really unproductive conversation. And it strikes me that she apologized afterwards, because I guess when we were talking about it, she would have been upset and probably kind of like expressing the frustration and anger that she had been feeling about it. And if you're a Mormon missionary / if you're a Mormon, you're not supposed to be angry and upset, or you're part of the problem. Even if you're angry and upset because someone is like doing something that is angry and upset, like frustrating and upsetting, right? So she apologized for like being upset, even though what was going on was like I was being like immature and like I was not treating her respectfully. And then I also apologized, but like I just like, oh my gosh. Maybe, I don't know. I don't remember how she reacted. Maybe she overreacted. I don't know, but it's very likely to me that she did not need to be apologizing, and that was kind of perpetuating unhealthy dynamics. Yikes. Also, just pointing out that it's Saturday, but we were fasting. So I guess we just decided, oh yeah, we did an extra fast. In addition to the other fast we also do once a month. And of course, okay, so it's morning, so we're gonna fast for help. So we're just not gonna eat or drink water because we want help with Sister Snow. Sister Snow is worried about playing piano for this thing, and I want to fast to support her and like help her feel ready. I hope you can see where things do not correlate. So we're going to do that. And now we're going to go on a run and work out. And then we're going to do our whole normal day. And then we're going to go to this baptism. And now that we haven't eaten breakfast, we haven't eaten since dinner last night. And we haven't had water. And we've like worked out. And now Sister Snow needs to be able to concentrate on this music. Here's hoping the fasting helped. Yeah. Wow. Now looking back on that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that just made it worse. That was not helping. Oh. So anyway, let's talk about, I'm just going to mention the situation with Julia. So yeah. Mormon code, special spirit means it's kind of like a nice way to be like, I don't know, I'm not sure if like derogatory is the right word, but a bit of like a moment of like ableism or like kind of infantilizing maybe. I guess it's like disability porn. I don't know if you know this concept. Something that can happen when people when people are trying to be like accommodating or like inclusive of people with disabilities, whatever that might be. They might say like, oh, here's this really inspiring story of this person like going around and doing stuff like in spite of their disability, in spite of the setbacks that they have. And it's that kind of thing tends to be kind of like infantilizing and like not from the perspective of the person who is having the story told about them. So it can just be like this weird like, I'm getting this like nice feeling of like seeing someone overcome something really hard, when in reality it's like this is just their life, and this is actually a really icky way to like kind of like look down on someone or like call them an inspiration for just sort of existing. And anyway, I think that I knew that talking with her and talking with her one time about the church and convincing her to be baptized in our first meeting, I think I kind of knew that we were taking advantage of someone who was naturally more trusting. But it felt like maybe a little bit complicated, but it was like, well, this is the right thing. Like, this is what she needs. So she's just like, she's in more connection with God, and she is trusting us because she can feel the Spirit, and like she knows that this is right. So looking back on that, I have regret about how that was handled, but I mean, this is the typical interaction you would expect with Mormon missionaries and someone in this situation. So let me read, I guess, the final entry. So there's a little bit more to the story. So I'll just read it, and we'll find out what happens. Okay. Sunday, July 19th, 2015, Mission Day 282. After church today, we had another discussion with Krista. Today on the plan of salvation. Brother Rosenberg didn't show up until about 20 minutes in, so we had a good flow going, and Krista got to ask a lot more questions. She was really interested in learning about ghosts, and that the spirit world is on Earth. We had to warn her against trying to communicate with Ouija boards and stuff like that. They'll probably have some good conversations about that. After we finished, Sister Snow asked her if she really wants to meet with us and be baptized, or if she's just going with it. Okay. She teared up and shared that it's so wonderful to her. It's so different from what her mom pushed her into. She knows it's the path she needs to be on, and she can see that her faith is going to get stronger than she ever thought possible. I'm so grateful that I got to be a part of her conversion process, her conversion experience. She is so humble and pretty and kind and patient. Also, she sat by Trade and Styler in church today. Matchmaking. I have been loving the talk Sister Johnson gave me. It's called A Personal Search for the Meaning of the Atonement by W. Cleon Skousen. Julia called and dropped us. I guess her family super freaked out at her when she came up to them with the Book of Mormon. And they've been yelling at her, and they even want her to break up with Brent. It's amazing how the gospel can be such a can of worms. Reminds me of Matthew 10:34 through 36. I guess I'll look that up. Feels relevant to the point I am trying to make. Probably, I don't even remember. Matthew 10. Wow, okay. I think this is the Sermon on the Mount. Well, whatever. The heading to this chapter says, Jesus instructs and empowers the 12 apostles and sends them forth to preach, minister, and heal the sick. Those who receive the 12 receive the Lord. That's the main insight into this chapter. Okay, so here's verses 34 through 36. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. Dang. I did not think it was going to be that explicit. Wow, okay, so yeah, getting really escalating things there. Yeah, I was clueless. I was brainwashed. What more can we say? I don't know if her family knew specifically about like the real reasons why she like shouldn't join a church, or if they knew like the weird fake stuff that Christian denominations will say about joining the church. But either way, even though it was probably really messy and uncomfortable for her, I am glad that they stepped in and, you know, ideally without like the yelling and stuff, but it does seem like it was for the best that we had to, it was clear that we needed to break contact with her. I would say now that's the best call for everyone. Not just her, I think that's the best call for everyone. And I think it's very sad that we endangered, I mean, we didn't, it wasn't on purpose, but yeah, we endangered her relationship with Brent. her fiance, because he had recommended her to us because we asked him to. I don't think he was like, oh, I want my fiance to join. We were always bugging him for like people who, pressuring him to give us names of people to talk to. So this kind of feels like it was our fault, except it wasn't our fault because we were just doing what we were told, but yada, yada, yada. I still feel bad about it, right? I hope everything worked out. Okay. Talking about Krista. Just pointing out she looks like she had something going on with her mom, and I don't know exactly what, but this felt like it was more in line with what she believed, which, hey, fair. At least this, she probably, unfortunately, didn't learn all of the stuff that's relevant. Like, she certainly didn't learn about, like, polygamy before she joined, and she probably didn't learn about, like, Brigham Young's weird teachings about the blood atonement, and, like, bare minimum, she didn't learn about what she would be covenanting in the temple. But she was very excited about what she was learning so far. And I was also surprised by what I wrote. I wrote, she's so humble and pretty and kind and patient. It's like, why did I care that she was pretty? But then right after that, I wrote, also, she sat by Traden Styler, the newly baptized man, in church today. So basically, I am just, once again, trying to live vicariously through other people. And here I am seeing this young, beautiful woman who's joining the church, and everything's coming together, as is how I would have seen it. And, oh, look, she's not only like learning the gospel, but all the other stuff that's supposed to happen is happening too. Like, here's this newly baptized man, and she was sitting by him, and oh my gosh, like, what if they get married? And like, what if we are the reason that like this eternal family happens? Like, that was just like matchmaking while doing missionary work was like, I don't know if there's a higher high than that. Because there's just nothing more important in Mormonism than getting married. There is nothing more important. Like, that's the point, especially if, like, well, okay, you can't go to the highest degree of glory of heaven if you're not married with the proper priesthood authority. So married in the temple, sealed together. And so just the fact that I got to be a part of watching this like beautiful young woman like find the gospel and begin radiating the joy of gospel, and like perhaps even finding her eternal companion, it was just like, all right, here I am on a mission, and I'm like kind of worried about dealing with all that stuff myself. Like, it's kind of, yeah, it's exciting, but it's also scary. But this way, I get to just kind of look at it happening to someone else, and I can kind of just enjoy the detached, like, I don't have to deal with it myself. I just get to see it happening in someone else's life, and it's like watching a rom-com, basically. It's just like sweet and emotionally safe, but fluffy cotton candy. How lovely, how sweet, how romantic, right? That's my take on that now. And I want to, just for a second, just talk once more about the whole ghost thing. So, yeah, we were talking with Krista about the plan of salvation, which is basically learning about the path of your soul from when you're created by God to when you die and go to heaven, ideally. And there was some funny shade where it was like Brother Rosenberg didn't show up until about 20 minutes in, so we had a really good flow going, and Krista got to ask a lot more questions, aka he wasn't jumping in and talking too much. That was funny that I wrote that down. But also she was really interested in learning about ghosts. And one thing that could be compelling, I think, for people when they're meeting with missionaries is we will claim to have a lot of the answers about, like, very specific things. Like, we will claim to say, oh yeah, you're curious about ghosts? Ghosts are real, and this is why. And we told her that ghosts are real, spirits are real, demons are real. And before you were born, God, like, born here, like, you were, like, born as a spirit baby, and you existed in heaven, in the spirit world. Not in heaven. You existed with God in the spirit world, pre-earth life. But did you know that the spirit world is on earth? So there are all these spirits around you, and you can't see them. But if you do stuff like Ouija boards or tarot cards or watching scary horror movies, or even if you just hear stories about seeing ghosts, or if you think you see a ghost, that's real. That's what you're telling her. And yeah, like, I knew you should not play with Ouija boards because I was taught that those were real. And maybe you believe in that, maybe you don't. But it is certainly a part of the Mormon experience that people love to share spooky stories and tell scary ghost stories, around the campfire kind of vibe, or even just if you're at your seminary lesson and you're all, like, bored and you want to just hear stories, so you get your seminary teacher to tell you a taken as true, told to you by a responsible adult story about ghosts. And maybe you believe in this. I no longer believe in this. And I now believe that the idea that this was real, it just made me, like, more scared, and I had a scary time going around the world. Like, if you think that, like, your unborn children are just, like, hanging out watching you all the time, and, like, all your ancestors are, like, hanging out watching you all the time, and then also, like, all the demons are just, like, hanging out, like, ready to, like, freak you out all the time. Just the constant knowledge of that, just always at the back of your mind, it's just not, like, very soothing. So that's my takeaway. And that's my 42nd week as a Mormon sister missionary. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you want to continue following my story. Please rate and review this episode, and please share this with anyone you think would be interested. I hope you have a great week, and if you want my advice, just remember that you can love others best when you love yourself first. Bye!